Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist and gastroenterologist Steve Schutz. I'm here with co-hosts, trauma surgeon Stephan Moran and automotive connoisseur, collector, historian Adams Hudson. We are going to talk Ford Mustang GTD car spotting. We saw a weird, wacky car and safety with our trauma surgeon. So safety, automotive from the trauma surgeon perspective. We're going to talk Pebble Beach. It just happened, just wrapped up. Pebble Beach is always good. This year was, I think, especially good. And then we're going to do, if we have time, this or that. So actually, we're going to do that because it's a good one. Anyway, Stephan, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's hotter than hell down here in Alabama. I mean, it's like 7 o'clock this morning. It was already 86 degrees. And you know it's bad when you wake up and the outside of your windows are all just got fog all over them. It's just terribly hot down here.
And Adams is in Highlands, North Carolina. I'll always call it the Highlands, but I know it's Highlands.
Well, yeah, that's what all the locals do, Steve. So you just keep doing that. And well, I'll tell you, in Highlands, North Carolina, and in this area of Western North Carolina, it's a shocking 74 to 77 degrees. And if you look at your latitude lines, it's just not that darn far above even Atlanta. It's only about a 2.5 hour drive, which is, of course, why this place is so dang popular. We were in almost Canada 2 weeks ago, and it was 94 degrees there, and it's 74 degrees here. And it's just the miracle of what the mountains and the cool air does. So it's pleasant. And I've seen some cool cars up here. These are the best car roads in America. Let's keep that among us, shall we?
Yeah, it's near the tail of the dragon. So
yep.
I can only imagine what it's like to drive. I want to get right into this. As soon as I saw this news, and Adams, I'm sure I'm speaking for you too. I said, Dr. Stephan Moran is going to have thoughts. So the Mustang GTD, Stephan.
Not only thoughts, he may have a canceled order in his future.
Go for it, Stephan.
Yeah, I was super excited last week. I'd heard there were some rumors came out, and then actually there's some spy pics that came out that showed it. But I'm always excited when an automotive manufacturer decides to take on something and a special car. And we saw Jim Farley race his Cobra at Laguna Seca years ago when we were in Monterey. He's a big car nut. Jim Farley's the CEO of Ford. And he summed up the new Mustang GTD supercar in 3 words: sophisticated techno badass. And this is really American badassery. It's a V8 up front. And he said this car has been in his head for 5 years now. He said it's the Mustang he's always dreamed about building, a Mustang that can take on the European elite, the Porsche, Mercedes, AMG, and Aston Martin, and make them sweat, he said. I think he's channeled some inner Ford here. Henry Ford, wanted taken on Ferrari back in the 60s, the Ford versus Ferrari. I think Jim Farley wants to up that legacy. They won Le Mans with the GT a couple years back. So I think this is a very cool car. He wants this car to beat everyone's ass at the Nürburgring. This is what he's designed this car for. And I think it's basically a homologated GT3 racer is what this car is. But it's absolutely, I just think it's cool. It looks awesome. I've got some pictures here, listeners. I'm bringing up. Here's a front view. I mean, it just looks mean and badass, and it looks fast. It's got active aero. It's going to have at least 800 horsepower. Something they did really cool is, this is not the first time, but they moved the transaxle to the back of the car. And this is to gain a 50-50 balance. Now, what's interesting is, 50-50 balance, is that the definition of a mid-engine car? What do you get? Some people call it a mid-engine car because it's 50-50 evenly balanced. But what do you guys, I wouldn't call it a mid-engine car.
I wouldn't call it a mid-engine car, and there's all sorts of variations on the techno rule of why that is done. However, they did stuff that V8 aft of the front shock towers, which makes it a front mid-engine, and you moving the transaxle to the rear for the 50-50. I mean, you know, they might be a little bit late to the party on the weight distribution side, but their rear suspension has never suffered terribly as a result. Although we all have seen the videos of the Mustangs getting completely sideways 3 feet after somebody jams their foot on the accelerator. You know, Porsche had that bright idea about what they call the transaxle era car starting about 83 with the 944. And they continued that for a long, long time. And Ford doing it now, it doesn't mean that they're late or slow. What they've done here is broken the dadgum muscle car mold wide open, and yay to Jim Farley and Ford for doing it with more than just raw horsepower. I mean, look at that thing. Look at all the aero. You can tell there's aero. You can look at the cooling vents, the heat extraction vents. I don't love rear tails, but I'll give that car a buy because it's so well integrated. And it's, you know, some people will say, and I don't mean to like over talk this, but, you know, I mean, the moment I saw it and when Steve and I were saying, my God, Stephan's just going to go off on it, I feel like Steph's had these thoughts as well. A $300,000 Mustang is some people's response. And I'm going, no, that's like a bargain compared to what it competes with. And they're only going to make 1,000 of them, or so they say. They might make more. But I mean,
Yeah, they said actually maybe 2,000 is what.
Is that right?
Yeah, about 2,000. But yeah, I think you mentioned it has one of the most sophisticated rear suspensions. It's not even, the suspension is not even legal in the racing series. But let me find it here. I want to read this to you. The GTD will also break new ground with its track-focused rear suspension that incorporates Multimatic design DSSV adaptive spool valve dampers and coilover springs arranged in a horizontal cross pattern.
You do not get those at AutoZone.
You cannot get that at AutoZone, but yeah, and it actually occupies the whole rear of the car. You can see the suspension inside. And this really is I mean, like you said, Adam, this is a lot of technology for $300,000. And one of the other cool things is the serial plate number is made out of titanium from a retired Lockheed Martin F-22 fighter. I mean, American air supremacy. So here's American air supremacy, jet noise, the sound of freedom, piece of that in American V8, which is the sound of muscle. So I
don't know where you found that little factoid about the ID plate, but give the person a raise who came up with that little bit of genius. That's cool.
I do want to nerd out on you guys for a moment here. So, because I used to design remote control airplanes, fighters, and there were some people we put our engines in the middle of the airplane. Other people would put them on the tail of the airplane. But even though the airplanes had the exact same balance, there's a difference in a thing called polar moment of inertia. So when you have an engine behind the front axle and the transaxle at the back, that's very different than having everything stuffed in the middle. And the way to think about it is if you have a barbell with 25-pound weights hanging off each end of the bell of the bar, and you try to turn it and spin it, if you have those weights at the outside of the bar, it's harder to get it to turn. If you have those weights all the way to the inside, it's much easier to get the bar to turn. So that's called polar moment of inertia. And that does translate why people say that you'll get, especially in a mid-engine car, when they lose traction, they will snap spin faster than a heartbeat. Whereas you see a car that's got an engine in the front rear, a larger polar moment of inertia, you're going to see a slower breakaway in that vehicle. So there is a difference in how they handle. And even though this is a 50-50 balanced car, can handle very differently based upon its polar moment of inertia. So enough nerd science stuff, but
that's
I find it fascinating.
You explained it well too.
I've got two thoughts about this. Obviously, I love it. I think it's fantastic. I'm excited, but this is not a modified Mustang. This is a complete departure from a Mustang with a Mustang body on it. I think for the better. I think it's great. But there's another complete departure for the Mustang, which is a different car with a Mustang body on it, and it's called a Mach-E. I hate it. Hate it. This I love because it's performance. It's so exciting. I'm thrilled by this car. It's not a hybrid. It's an internal combustion engine car, 800 horsepower. This reminds me, guys, this came so out of left field. It reminds me of when the Hellcat launched. All of a sudden, we're just living our lives. Everything's fine. And all of a sudden, there's a 707 horsepower Challenger, and everyone just put their pencils down, looked up, and said, "What?" Remember? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was shocking that there was a 707 horsepower Challenger and Charger. We just could. I was like, "What is happening?" And it was so exciting. This is like that. Obviously, it's much more expensive. This is a much more sophisticated piece, but it's so thrilling. And we're thinking about electric cars and coming and and charging and range, and we're changing our minds. And all of a sudden, Ford just like this is like the what's the guy? The Kool-Aid guy shows up at the party. The big Kool-Aid guy, and everyone's like, "Whoa, the Kool-Aid guy is here." That's what this is like.
You
Yeah,
know,
people. Go ahead, Adams.
well, Steve mentioned that moment. I mean, I actually, I'm such a car goof. I remember where I was when I heard about the Hellcat when it came out. I thought, you got to be kidding. That's not true. I mean, I just like was in denial. What I relate this to on the Mustang side, it's got so much exotica about it. It's like when I first heard of the Ford GT, the reintroduction in 2004.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, it was like a 2-minute commercial that played during the Super Bowl. And I remember just stopping and staring at the screen going, they're really doing it. They're really doing it. And that's how this Mustang hits me. It's exotic. It's different. It's radical. And I love that it's kind of in the face of, oh, we're all going EV and we're going to lose our way. And the internal combustion engine, let's go ahead and have our funeral. And boom, out comes the GTD.
Yeah. People were giving a hard time for the name GTD. And GT carries on the Mustang GT, the GT40, and the D is, listeners, that's the class which their race version of this car races in. So that's the D class.
I thought it meant diesel.
Well, that's the golf. So people were giving a hard time on the internet bashing the name. Well, to me, it is no. I mean, all right, you want to bash names? How about a Taycan Turbo S? Okay. An electric car that's called a turbo. And oh, by the way, the 911 is a turbo, but it's not a turbo unless you buy the Turbo S. Then you get a Turbo S sticker on a car that does have stickers, does have turbos. So kind of, the name doesn't bother me, but I know, the GTD, that was the Volkswagen Golf diesel.
Well, and the D, I think, pays some homage to Daytona, does it not? It's just not
Could be. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, the GTD has never been sold here, the Volkswagen GTD. And what it is in Europe is a GTI, which is a sporty Golf with a diesel engine. And it's been for sale. I don't even know if they still sell it, but it was introduced about 15 years ago. I'm just going to say flat out, I love the car, hate the name. I think GTD is dumb.
I'm fine with it. It pays to a class, but they could have done GT. Maybe, who knows? But
it's not going to slow sales down one bit. I guarantee.
No, absolutely not.
And if you looked on the Ford website, we may have to move on. But if you look on the Ford website, this is not whether or not you can write a $300,000 check. It's about who you are, your legacy, heritage, your intent with the car, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, this car is not going to be a grocery getter because, as Stephan mentioned, the entire rear end is suspension, i.e., no room for the golf clubs in your trunk.
Right.
They'll sell them all, bad name or not.
Oh yeah, they'll get. I'm sure they'll have anti-flipping rules. The bottom line is, who cares about the name? This car is so great. If Margot Robbie's first name were Bertha, I would let it slide.
Well, there you go. Amen to that.
All right, car spotting. I saw something weird. This is the 2018 a Range Rover Evoque convertible.
Dear God.
And there's two convertibles from this era, which I think we all agree were just stupid and goofy. This is one of them. The other was the Nissan Murano convertible. And they're both stupid. They make no sense. They look weird. They look goofy, but you see them around. To Range Rover's credit, they pulled the plug after 2 model years, 17 and 18. But you still see them around. But I saw one. It looked weird. It looked goofy. It reminded me that it was a mistake by Range Rover. But what do you guys think? I saw it. It's in the wild, and there it was.
Yeah, listeners, the English love convertibles. And think about it, they get so few days of sunshine over there. I read an article about this. They get so few days of sunshine that they celebrate it when the sun comes out, and they want to drop the tops on their cars. So I'm sure this was built with the intent for the English market, the British market. But the idea, you're right, Steve-O, of taking a compact SUV and chopping the top off. I think they did it with the PT Cruiser as well. That was horribly ugly. This thing looks awful. I cannot imagine how this thing must twist and have cowl shake. COWL, that's the cowl, the front where the windshield attaches to the car, and you got your cowl with your dashes there. I mean, I'm sure most convertibles are difficult to not have some shake and instability, but these things must twist and shout going down the road. I can't imagine.
I just can't handle it. I mean, it's like they attempted to be a category buster, a category breaker, a category divider, so they can lead that category. But what is that category? I mean, that thing is really, to me, it should be the Range Rover Evoque. It is just not. It has no real purpose. To me, it's kind of like Range Rover's Chevy SSR. It's like, what is that? What is it trying to be? How many different versions of its purpose could it possibly be doing poorly? I just can't stand it.
Well, it makes you wonder. I mean, I think every new car, as they conceive it, has a target customer. And I don't know who the target customer is. Just a few numbers on this car. It MSRP'd for between $51,000 and $65,000. That compares with its competition back then, the E350 Mercedes convertible, which was beautiful as a car. That was $67,000. The BMW 430i convertible, which is really beautiful, $53,000. So about the same price. Mercedes a little bit more. And the Ford Mustang was $32,000 to start for the convertible in 2018. The GT was $40,000. You get a V8 that looks like a car that looks normal back then. I don't know who they're thinking is going to buy this. I mean, they didn't sell many, so to their credit, they pulled the plug because they realized it was a failure. But why did they green light it?
I have no idea.
That's a good question. That's one of those, where the marketing department won and the accounting department lost. And then in 2 years, the accounting department wins, the marketing department loses. And anyway, yeah, you wonder how those votes go behind closed doors. But that was one that should have been a big fat no.
Yeah, to me, it's like a couple. You see they're going to get married. You're like, it's not going to work, and then it doesn't work. And the question always is, listen, I know why you got divorced. Why'd you get married? And that's what this is. It doesn't make any sense. It was doomed to failure. If they had done the smart thing, which has come to us and say, guys, what do you think? We would have said, hell no. But they didn't come to us.
And we'd have been right.
We would have been right, which we usually are. All right. That's anything else to say before we move on to safety, Stephan?
No, I said all I can about that car. I lost interest in it a long time ago. It's so ugly. All right. So safety this week, guys. This comes from Dr. Jeff Banks, Steve, your partner. His father sent us this article from Motor Biscuit. I'll just name this Henry Cesari. This was published on August 18th. And the title is State with the Most Pickup Trucks, also the second most dangerous to drive in. So I thought this was an interesting article because it talks about trucks, and it also talks from the safety standpoint, animal collisions, which I can expand on. So Wyoming loved its pickup trucks. They have twice as many on its road as the average state. And they're also, in terms of fatalities per state, they're number 2. They're right behind Mississippi. In the United States, we sell about 16.7% of all vehicles sold are trucks. And in Wyoming, the registration on trucks are 37% of the mix.
Wow.
So yeah, they've got twice the national average up there. And you kind of ask yourself, why do they have so many pickup trucks? You can imagine Wyoming it's wide open country, and there are work trucks. They keep their trucks on the road a long time up there compared to other states. And there are 2.89 trucks for every square mile of land developed and undeveloped in Wyoming. Isn't that an amazing statistic? Think about that. And they've got one of the lowest year-round populations of any state in the country, but it comes to one truck for every 2 residents, and it's actually 2.04 trucks per resident, which is impressive. Second place for trucks is Montana. They've got about 34% are pickup trucks. In Texas, where you would think that would be the highest, they're relatively few at only 19.7%. And what they say is, places like Montana and Wyoming, people just keep their trucks and they just keep adding to their truck collection. Whereas Texas, they're flipping and they're moving on to other stuff. Now, why is Wyoming so dangerous? Well, the author here said 2 big reasons that he thought. Number one would be wildlife, people striking animals, deer, elk, etc. And the other one, he said they had really high winds up there. So those 2 probably contributed. But if you look at overall crash statistics, still the most common fatality is single vehicle collision, followed by colliding with another vehicle. And actually animal collisions are much lower. And which state do you think actually has the highest number of fatalities from animal collisions?
No idea.
West
Texas.
Virginia.
Oh,
West
wow.
Virginia. Yep. And actually, there the chances that you strike an animal for an individual driver is 1 in 35. Montana is 1 in 44. So, and then South Dakota is down to 1 in 51. Michigan 1 in 51, and Wyoming actually rounds out the top 10. So, what months do you think you're most likely to strike a large animal driving in your car, like a deer or something like that?
Well, what's the question? What vehicle?
Which if you want to pay attention to deer coming across the interstate in front of you, which 3 months do you think is the highest likelihood that you're going to collide with an animal?
No idea.
December, January, February.
Yep, close, Adams. November, October, December. Animals are in the rut. They're on the move. The males, the bucks are chasing the does, and there's also hunters. Typically, that's part of hunting season. The top deer is number 1. Of the top 5, 1.37 million collisions with deer reported by State Farm Statistics. And then it goes rodents, dogs, and then
how
raccoons.
many deer strikes in a year?
1.3
million.
Yeah.
1.3 million deer strikes. Wow. I knew it was a lot. That's a lot.
Collision. That's a lot.
I mean,
that's what it says from State Farm. I was looking at it too, thinking that's a lot.
Now, Steph, let me get clarity on one thing. You're talking about Wyoming as being number 2
ranked by death.
Okay.
Death.
Is that per capita or is that just within the state borders? I mean,
that is deaths per 100,000 people.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That is incredible because you feel like, again, I'm like looking from the primitive side of this inward, that much open space, that much open land. You think, well, what else is there to hit? Because I think about traffic as being the thing that causes the accidents, but there's a lot of wide open area out there. Having just come back from Montana, not terribly long ago, you can go an hour without seeing another car on a major highway. It's just not that hard to do. So
yeah, but they got 80-mile-per-hour speed limits, and people are just hauling ass up there. So you think about it, you lose control at 80 miles an hour in your truck. You blow a tire. You move to swerve to avoid something. So single vehicle collisions still remain the number 1 cause of fatalities. So it falls back upon driver behavior, and if you're going to crash, the other thing is, if you're going to lose control and crash, would you rather lose control in a truck or a sedan?
Truck.
Sedan. Yeah. Sedan. No, if you're going to lose control in a vehicle, it's going to be much more stable to be in a sedan.
Put me low to the ground.
Yeah. Low to the ground, low center of gravity. So you're going to gain control. And that's why pickup trucks have higher fatality rates than sedans, even in single vehicle collisions. Cause you can't, you lose control of a pickup truck. You're not going to regain it like you would in a car with a low center of gravity. And now, if I had to pick between a sedan and an F-250 hitting a deer, I'll take the F-250 all day long.
Yeah,
but even if
anything,
yeah. So if you look at, even though they do have a lot of wildlife and wildlife strikes, I think I didn't dive deep in the data, but this would be, I would think, losing control. This would be speed related loss of control on a pickup truck has a higher fatality rate than a sedan. So I would have to say that, they got higher speed limits. Yes, they're wide open. They have high winds. You're in a pickup truck, a wind's going to blow you more than the sedan. So you kind of put it all together. And I think the guy was pointing in the right direction that, yeah, they're second highest in fatalities, wide open roads. They got more pickup trucks, higher speeds, driver distraction, whatever you want to call it, winds, animals, and they're having, more likely to have single vehicle collisions.
And older vehicles. I wondered
yes.
if they have state inspections, which it sounds like they may not.
Yeah, and you're right. The number of registrations, they are older vehicles. And I think it wasn't until 1999 that trucks actually had to comply with crash testing. They were exempted from it. But since then, they now have to comply. And if you look at trucks versus sedans in terms of safety, the F-150 made it, the Dodge Rams made it, but the only cars that get the pluses, the trucks, I should say, is the Tundra. So comparing vehicle to vehicle, there are far fewer top picks from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety and pickup trucks than there are sedans as well as SUVs. So interesting. Well, yeah, I think, let me wrap this safety segment up talking about some kind of tips to avoid, how do you avoid animals on the road? And, one big thing is just, stay alert, pay attention. And when I'm driving, especially here in Alabama and coming to home on the 2-lane road, I mean, I am scanning for those deer in the headlights to see their eyes. And if there's one deer coming, there's going to be another one behind it. So if you see one on the side of the road, be prepared that another one may come shooting across. And my wife got hit by a deer in her neighborhood. She was going the speed limit, but the thing ran through the woods full speed and just ran into the side of her car. So I'm always cautious, paying attention. If you're at night, use your high beams. And actually, if you think you might see something, flick your high beams. That can startle the animal. And I tell my wife as well and everybody, if you see a deer in the road or even a small animal, raccoon, don't swerve. If there's nobody behind you, slam on your brakes as hard as you can. But if think about it, if you're doing 60 miles an hour and you think you're going to swerve to miss that deer, well, you may be the fatality versus the deer. And, so swerving at a high speed or rate is a bad option. And you're much better to just slam on the brakes and get the car slow. Then if you can swerve at a slow rate of speed, but most people, unless they've been to a driving course, aren't going to be able to do that, to learn to know when they can swerve and not. So, I don't brake for anything. I mean, I brake for if I need to, I'll brake, but I don't swerve for anything. It doesn't matter what it is now. If it is an armadillo, I'm going to try to high ride that thing because I do not want to hit that thing even with a tire. But anything smaller, like I don't worry about it.
They're just stones with feet.
Yes, they're awful. And then dusk and dawn are the times when they come out, and that's when you're going to see them. And they, I remember when I was driving, a friend of ours put these little whistles on the front of the car. Those don't work. Then this is obvious, but wear your seatbelt too. Because if you do strike a deer, you want to be belted. If you're not belted and you try to swerve, now you're likely to throw yourself out of the driver's seat. So, deer season is not too far away from us. The high times where we're going to see more movement. So, anyway, cool. Thanks to Jeff Banks' dad, one of our dedicated listeners. I'm sorry I don't know his first name.
Jerry Bank. Yeah,
Jerry. All right, Jerry. But thank you, Jerry Bank, avid listener.
Yeah, he's a good guy and a Corvette guy. So thank you again, Jerry.
I won't hold that against him.
Thank you, Stephan. Pebble Beach just ended, guys. It's the car week. It's amazing. It's incredible. And it just ended.
Hey, Steve, I'm just saying, listeners, if you're a car enthusiast, Steve-O and I went, how many years ago was that, Steve-O?
2012.
2012. We went out there for the week. It was just, I was just, oh my God, here, left, there, everywhere you went. It was just, you're going to see the most desirable cars in the entire world. Cars that come out of hiding that have never been seen to the public before. And if you're into cars, you will find something at Pebble Beach that is just going to blow your mind. It was just, I want to go back. I had just a tremendous time.
It's a little bit overwhelming because you've got the historic races at Laguna Seca. And to me, the most remarkable thing is people will bring out their multi-million-dollar cars, park them on the street in Carmel. They drive them on the street. I have a picture on my phone. I didn't take the picture, but it shows the guy who owns WeatherTech. He bought a 1963.
McNeil.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
McNeil. He bought a 1963 Ferrari GTO for 250 GTO. He bought it for $70 million. There's a picture of that car in traffic going to Pebble Beach. In traffic, $70 million car. These are this, you just see these all over, not that extreme, but you'll see $2, $3, $4, $5 million cars parked on the street in Carmel. It's incredible. So the winner this year was a 1937 Mercedes 540K, beautiful roadster, specially designed and made for the Shah of Afghanistan. I didn't know there was such a thing. Obviously not anymore. It is funny to look at that car and say, gee, I wonder if the head guy from the Taliban would drive that. But anyway, the Shah of Afghanistan back in the day owned this. It was built for him in 1937. He bought it new. It won. Adams, this is your world.
It's several orbits outside of my normal world, but what I adore about this hobby, that's my world. And if you just look at just look, and I won't get all gushy about the lines, but I mean, just let your eyes sort of flow over that car and think about it being 1937, first of all, and how hard it was to make those fenders and make those side pipes and make that car look like a teardrop in the wind. And it's just a fantastic piece. A 540 was 100% hand built, basically very, very little machinery involved. And a 540 also won in 2021. I mean, look at that. If that's not the epitome of Art Deco, that's just fantastic. I mean, you would have to imagine if you reached in there and pulled any of those mother of pearl switches out, those are art unto themselves. And that's just one little piece of the tens of thousands of pieces on that car. And with this car, prior to this car winning this year, Bugatti and Mercedes were tied at 9 wins each since Pebble Beach's inception in about 1950, I believe. This was the 72nd Pebble Beach, whatever year that makes it. But with this car, Mercedes-Benz pulled ahead with 10 wins to 9 over Bugatti, and so deserved. And as listeners and viewers look at this and they just gush about, what is it worth? What did it cost the guy? By the way, it was Jim Patterson's car out of Louisville, Kentucky, to restore that car. And people get the wrong idea about the Pebble Beach Concours. They think it's just money on top of money and people sort of showing off, and dudes in their blazers and straw hats with their bombshell third wife walking around. Well, let's remember, this is a charitable event. This event has raised $35 million for charity, mostly children's causes, a lot of local charities.
Wow.
This year alone, yeah, that is a wow. I think people need to sort of pull back and go, well, it's not all about the glitz and glamour. There's a lot of good being done here, which is why it started. This year alone was $3 million, almost $3 million given to charity, along with thousands of donor hours, lots of sponsorship dough. And then we look at the other part of Pebble Beach, which are like you guys mentioned, just stuff you see just driving around. If you're a gearhead and have not been, put it on your list. And like Steve said, that word overwhelming, it is overwhelming. You will come back and your eyeballs will be hurting from all the beautiful cars that you've seen. Just a fantastic event.
Yeah, it was spectacular when we went there, and there's shows everywhere. And think about it, these are cars that come out once in a lifetime, to come to Pebble Beach to enter. And if they do, what is it? They can't come back for 10 years or something like that. Once they've been entered into Pebble Beach, you're in that club. Now, this car will never probably be seen in public again. But it's so cool. Here was my favorite, Adams.
Yeah. Look at
this
that.
one is class. So readers, there's a great book called French Curves, which is from the Mullen Auto Museum, and it's all the period of French automotive design, and it's all teardrops and streaming. And
Is that a Tatra or a what is what are we
that
looking
is a 1937. You just got to love the name here. Talbot Lago
Lago.
T150C SS Figoni and Fascini.
Okay.
It is, and these are my favorite era cars. This Art Deco era, and you had the Bugatti, the Atlantic Coupe, but you'll see cars like this at Pebble Beach, and it's a spectacular place to go see cars.
Well, and let me mention one other thing just to make sure the gearheads do put it on their list, because if you're not into the super grand classics and you look at them as like, okay, well, that's just phenomenally unapproachable and hard to even understand, the grandeur of these cars and their tens of millions of dollars in price tags. Let's remember there's about 100 classes of cars there. There's pre-war, there's post-war, there's most elegant, there's sporting cars, there's hill climb cars. Best car out of Italy, best car out of Britain. Almost every subcategory of wonderfulness you can think of is represented at Pebble Beach. So it's not just about the best of show, even though that gets all the glory. There is a lot. I think there were like 217 comes to mind, cars on the show field competing in their respective categories. And these are the best of the best of the best. You don't just show up and say, where do I park? You have to have won something. You have to be recommended. You have to have the creds to make sure you can pull out onto the lawn. It's just I don't know. It makes me want to go back so badly. And I went in 2000, and think how long ago that was. I remember it vividly. I remember coming up to a four-way stop and looking around. Of course, I'm in some rented Mustang, and the other three cars waiting to go were like a 250 GT California, a Maserati Birdcage, and then to my right is some other fantastic hand-built car. It's just mind-blowing. Fun stuff.
There was a special category for this. I think it's the 60th year of Lamborghini, and it was won by a lime green Miura that was perfect.
Yep.
Stunningly beautiful.
Yep.
And the 75 years of Porsche was won by a 901, which is the earliest 911, and it was owned by Alois Roof. Previous guest Mike McMillan, you guys have not met him, but I know you've listened to his show. Mike McMillan grew up in that area. He raced when he was in his 20s, and Mike McMillan was there this year. It is his 37th consecutive Pebble Beach trip.
Wow.
That's got to be some kind of record or near record. That's just incredible. Need to get him back on here. And I don't know if we have any time to mention auction results, or do we need to move on?
No, we have some time. And before you say that, Stephan showing that Talbot and then the 540K Mercedes that won, they all remind me of something that we all know is happening, but it's kind of a slow process of this shift. These cars are transitioning from cars to works of art, and they are no longer just cars. That's why a car like the Uhlenhaut Mercedes 300 SLR that sold for $143 million, and that's why the GTOs that go for close to 100 million, that's why those prices are they make sense.
That is quite true, and I don't know if you meant to, but that was like a perfect segue into some of the auction results. And the cars that bring the top 10, when you look at the top 10 sales, it's just these crazy prices on cars like the 250 LM Ferrari. Actually, 8 of the top 10 sales at Pebble Beach Monterey Car Week were Ferrari. 8 of the top 10, and you're in the multiple tens of millions just for starter money there. And Steve, like you mentioned, they've transitioned to art. They are absolutely some version of sculpture or wall art or intrinsic mechanical art or industrial design art, however you want to put it, but they cease to be automobiles. And I would say if there is a trend that we'll explore in a future podcast, it's approachability and usability. And a lot of these things are neither approachable nor usable. And I think some of the trends in the auction results are going to show that the people who are of our age and older who are collecting these cars and paying crazy prices. As they age out, a new crop comes in. And so that's what we'll be looking at in a future episode. So stay tuned. But super briefly, let's see, a non-Ferrari that was number 2 in overall sales was a 57 Jaguar SS. Steph, you may have a photo of that. It's the car with the well, there's okay, there it is,
There
right?
it is.
That blue car with the crazy side pipes. Of course, you can probably see in there that car was evolving into the D-type, which won Le Mans 4 times, which evolved into the E-type back when Jaguar's naming made very good sense. That car brought a mere $13 million. Go Jaguar.
Yeah, it looks like it could be on the Cars movie. I mean,
It does.
It's got some comical. The listeners look it up. It's got the fenders are kind of ballooned up, and then it's got this stumpy little round upright windshield. I mean, it's a fantastic car, but to me, I'm surprised that hasn't been in Cars the movie yet.
That's a great line. Stephan, I love that. That's really a great line. It does look like it's from a cartoon, but it is just almost unspeakably beautiful. Just beautiful.
Yep. It is. I don't, it's funny now that you say that, Steph, I can't look at it as
me too.
I had formerly, because the car looks like it's just been the butt of a joke. Like it's just told a joke. And it's just, but you start to look at it and the greatly exaggerated sort of pontoon fenders, the greatly exaggerated side pipes with the minimalist sort of like heat shield, the wonderful drilled steel wheels. It's just got it going on. And, it ballooned into the very elegant E-type thereafter, but that was a killer car. And then a little bit farther down the list of big wins, and I just picked that one. That's a 275 GTB4, that green car, very uncharacteristically painted green as a Ferrari. That was like, oh, isn't that Great Britain's color? Well, yeah, it kind of is, but it fits that car as well. That car brought a bargain price to 3.8 million as it is. And of course, that's a front engine Colombo design V12 with the wonderful stacks of twin choke Weber carbs all lined up in a beautiful little soldier-like row. And I think we're seeing some of these age out, some of the late 50s, mid 60s cars that were pinnacle of their era, the Playboy era Ferrari, in favor of this next entry, which is a 94 964 3.6 turbo car. And Steve,
Porsche.
I'm gonna let you go. Yeah, Porsche.
Listeners, you can't see the picture of the Porsche.
Yeah, I want you to Steve, you can comment on that car right there, because that car brought, as I look it up, I think it was in the $250,000 range there, and for I consider that a modern car. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is a modern car. My thoughts are it's the last year of the 964, and the 964, they were pretty strapped for money, Porsche, so they didn't do much. They made very few changes in the body compared to the old G body. They were money limited, and this car came out during a pretty long global recession. They did not make many of these, did not sell many of these, and that was the regular car. Turbo, these are rare. They didn't make many because of the recession. So there's a reason these cars are so valuable.
I love that body style. I think it's just,
at the time it was considered kind of,
it
was considered to be just okay, because everyone knew that Porsche was limited in what they could spend. They had a budget problem. And everyone was like, it's kind of an ugly duckling. They could have done so much more. And of course they did with the 993, the next generation. But now in people look back on it and go, damn, it looked pretty good.
I think it looks great. It's felt, of course it's a turbo with the large fenders, but it just looks right sized. It's rightly proportioned. And I love that it looks like a Euro style bumper on that, the nice smooth bumpers. I love that car.
That is, well, it was a pinnacle car, but Steve, I tell you, man, you're right. When it came out, I remember this is why collectible cars are so dang hard to predict. Because when it came out, it was like, yawn, another G body. Oh, they grafted in this front end that was a little bit of an overbite look on the front. They changed the taillights, big deal. Now it's a reflector all the way across. Whoopee. It just wasn't that thrilling when it came out. But now in hindsight, it's like, dang it. That formula, they worked it to death and they extracted all they could out of that platform. And that's the car that represents the nth degree of the G Series car.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
I think Grant Larson designed it, but he was something interesting. The board of directors said, for the design, you may only change the car design-wise from the belt line down. So the lights, the fenders, everything above the belt line you were not allowed to change it, and it's all the same. That's why the taillights are different, because it's below the belt line and the front fender is different. But they talk about strict conditions, right?
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
people just fall over themselves about the 3.6 turbos. And of course, Singer has done their fair share of taking 964s out of the market and making them something else. So the numbers are even lower.
That's a good point. Yeah, very true. All right, we're going to do this or that. And Stephan, you're going to like this one because I thought, wouldn't it be great to do this or that? And surprisingly, the price is about the same. 2024 Mustang GTD versus.
Wait, is that it?
Well, wait a minute. That's the wrong GTE. That's the wrong GTD. Hold on. Listeners, I just brought up a picture of the Volkswagen Golf GTD. I'm sorry.
So the 2024 Mustang GTD versus the 2024 Porsche GT3 RS.
I think Stephan's question is not this. I think it's just going to be this or this.
Yeah.
There's that is mine.
So yeah, we what my answer is going to be. I mean, look at this. So I got a GT3 RS picture up here, listeners, white with some red rims on a track. The Porsche GT3 RS or the GTD. Well, let me tell you why. First of all, the reason's obvious. This is a Ford. I'm going to want a Ford. But think about the collectability. There's only going to be 2,000 of these. They've been making GT3 RSs and GT3s and GT2s and GT everything and every iteration variation. And yes, it will probably hold its value every bit as well as the Mustang. But I think from a standpoint of last, homage to the internal combustion engine, this from a major manufacturer, from Ford, who's now put out the GT, the new GT, now the Mustang GTD. I think from a long-term collectability standpoint that this is the car. I think the technology is worth every bit of it. And it is just, you can show up to a track day and there's going to be a lot of GT3s and some GT3 RSs, and there's going to be Porsches everywhere. You show up to a track day in this thing, I mean, you're going to be the center of the star. And to me, hands down the Mustang GTD for multiple reasons, other than we all know I'm a big Ford guy, but I think you could clearly make the case that the long-term collectability, this or that, this is the GTD is the answer to this one. So, all right, I see both you staring. All right, Steve, let's hear you.
Backed into silence here. I mean, there's nothing else to say about it.
All right, Steve, what do you think?
I would take the GT3 RS just because I'm more of a Porsche guy. But in 80 years, the star of Pebble Beach on the lawn is going to be the Mustang GTD. It's going to win any Cars and Coffee even now. The GTD is going to be much more I would say much more special in 80 years than the GT3 RS. They're making a lot of these GT3 RSs in all the generations. So it just won't be quite as special. I prefer it myself. I think the GTD is 800 horsepower. It's loud. It's over the top. It's just way more than I want. And I'm not really a Ford guy. It's not really approachable. But without any question, that is going to be a very, very special car for generations to come, more, and that's more so than the GT3 RS.
All right, Adams, you're up.
Man, it's funny. I agree with actually every single point that's been made by both you guys. And my heart leans, I love Porsche. I'm a Porsche guy, but my heart leans toward, the good US of A doing a wonderful thing in a mold breaker.
America.
Go America, a mold breaker at that. And if I'm looking at collectability, and I hate to even mention that because it means that you're going to put it under glass and not use it. If I were granted the opportunity to own one, I would sign a document that said I'm putting at least 10,000 miles on this car in the next 5 years. It would be the Mustang. It's just so unique. It's just so fun. It is such a throw down the gauntlet to Nürburgring or wherever Ford wants to prove themselves. I'm kind of getting tired of the whole Nürburgring. Can we do it in under 7 minutes? Can we do it in under 640? That I don't know. I'm sort of like almost tired of that comparison, but this is a car that will just dominate about anywhere, and you don't have to do it. If I owned one, and this will probably get me kicked off the list that I would never have made anyway, I would have to surgically remove that wing. I'm sorry, but
I think the reason you can is actually it's hydraulically activated like a DRS on a Formula One car. It is active aero. The thing moves, but you're right. It would be nice if you could do a delete option, or if you could have the option that it comes off and they provide nice little billet covers. So you could take it on and off for track days. I think that same thing for me with the Porsche GT3 RS. I mean, that's got one of those gigantic monster wings, and we all know how much I hate wings on cars. But
maybe Ford will come out with a touring edition.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I do love it.
This reminds me of, guys? As we go toward the electric era, this reminds me so much of my favorite movie, Animal House, where they're sitting around the frat house. They're all on double secret probation. They're all getting kicked out. The world is just it's falling in on them. Everything is bad. And all of a sudden, John Belushi goes, toga, toga, toga.
Yeah.
And they're beginning to get kicked out of school. So they're like, fuck it, we're doing this toga party. That's what this GTD is. It's like everyone's like looking at and instead of being all depressed, they're like, yeah, here's your electric car. And it's a fucking 800 horsepower just toga party.
It's a toga. It ought to be the GTT.
This is Jim Farley's personal toga party. You're absolutely right. I think his cousin Chris would have been very proud of him. Would probably be screaming toga toga. But when when Jim Farley, sophisticated techno badass, this is it. And I just hands down, it's the Mustang.
Emphasis on badass. I mean, the sophisticated. Yeah. Okay. Sure. What's the other one? Who cares? It's badass.
It's badass. Yeah. Techno. It is. It's badass.
All right. Well, with that, we'll let that be the last word for episode 80.
All right, listeners. We'll catch you next week. Remember, like, listen, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word, watch us on Instagram. And are you up on TikTok yet, Steve-O, with some of these things? Oh, yes. And we are on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, but
I got my haircut, and I've been getting my haircut from the same woman for 20 years. And she said, hey, I saw you on TikTok, your little video. And I'm like, yeah, all right, good. Very cool. Yes, we're on TikTok.
All right. Your hair looks fabulous too, by the way. And let me mention the last thing to the listeners and viewers. As you heard us today, we obviously do listen to the email. We look at and read the emails that we get. So if you've got a suggestion for anything that you'd like to see on a this or that or a program sort of queue, anything you want to talk about, shoot it to us. We'd be flattered, first of all, and may in fact use it. So thank you for the listeners who do send in suggestions.